Embroidery Time 3. This stage design features fly stitch, satin embroidery, herringbone stitch, contour embroidery, feather stitch, fluffy embroidery, fly stitch, French bean embroidery, cartwheel stitch, tulip embroidery. Remove the embroidery thread to be embroidered from the thread board. This embroidery thread consists of 6 small strands. We can split out a few shares by using a few shares. Thread the divided embroidery thread onto the needle. The embroidery thread threaded on the needle should be long on one side and short on the other side. Tie a knot at the long end to embroider it. Take a look at the fly stitch. The needle comes out from the bottom. Thread into the embroidery section at the next point. Then insert a needle in the middle of the pattern. After the needle is inserted, thread the needle and tighten it. Then thread the long needle tightly into the embroidery section. The 3 strands of line 5 are used here. Contour embroidery. The needle comes out from the bottom. Take a stitch forward. Don't completely tighten this embroidery thread. Then step back under the embroidered fabric. Insert the needle approximately in the middle of the 2 needles. After the needle is inserted, tighten the thread. This cycle of repair is stopped. The 3 strands of line 8 are used here. Herringbone stitch. The needle comes out from the bottom. Insert embroidered fabric at the bottom point. Embroider a straight line, then the next line and the previous line. This cross stitch embroidery. This leaf is embroidered with fish bones. Let's first stitch a straight line from above the leaf. Then, the first shot is taken out immediately. Embroider a straight line, same as the straight line in front. Embroidering in this way that intersects with each other, one stitch next to another. Circular embroidery. Until this leaf is embroidered full. Feather stitch. The needle comes out from the bottom. Insert embroidered fabric at the next point. Don't completely tighten this embroidery thread. Then insert a needle in the middle of the pattern. Thread the thread onto the needle and tighten it tightly. Repeat embroidery like this. The 3 strands of line 4 are used here. Tulip embroidery. The needle comes out from the bottom. Thread a little more into the embroidered fabric. Don't completely tighten this embroidery thread. Insert a needle in the middle of the pattern. After the needle is inserted, thread the needle and tighten it. Then insert a little more into the embroidered fabric. Take out the needle from the bottom again. After the needle is inserted, it passes through this small straight line. Then insert embroidered fabric at the bottom point. The 3 strands of line 7 are used here. Cartwheel stitch. Needle out from the outer diameter of the flower. Then insert the needle next to the center point of the flower. Following the first stitch closely, the needle is dispensed. After the needle is inserted, thread the needle and tighten it. Repeat the embroidery needle like this. The 3 strands of line 2 are used here. French bean embroidery. The needle comes out from the bottom. Hold the embroidery thread with your left hand. Wrap a circle around the needle. Then this stitch is threaded into the embroidered fabric. Do not loosen the thread on the left hand. Slowly pull the line on the right hand. Be careful not to be too tight until the end. If it's too tight, this place won't be full. The 4 strands of line 9 are used here. Contour embroidery. The 2 strands of line 1 are used here. The 3 strands of line 4 are used here. Satin embroidery. Embroider a straight line between 2 points in the pattern, 1 stitch after another. Circular embroidery needle. Until I embroider this pattern full. The 3 strands of line 5 are used here. Herringbone stitch. We use contour embroidery here. The bird's claws are embroidered with straight stitch. Embroider a straight line between 2 points in the pattern. The 3 strands of line 6 are used here. Contour embroidery. Fluffy embroidery. Thread the needle through the embroidered fabric. Leave appropriate lengths for embroidery thread. Then follow the left side of this stitch to release the needle. Tighten after needle insertion. Then move forward a little bit, continuing with the first shot. Alternatively, a needle can be inserted at the sample location of the first needle. Tightening. This way of circular embroidery. After the plush embroidery is done, trim the embroidery thread into shape according to the requirements. The 3 strands of line liner are used here. Satin embroidery. The 3 strands of line 5 are used here. Satin embroidery. The 3 strands of line 7 are used here. Satin embroidery. The eyes are using 3 strands from line 8. French bean embroidery. The bird's beak is embroidered with straight stitch.